Hi guys, and welcome to another edition of the Kevin Moore Show. Now on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Saryon Michael White. Now Saryon is an author, intuitive healer, public speaker, and channel for spirit. Now Saryon's unique spiritual training has allowed him to combine empathic intuitive gifts and an ability to channel messages from guides to offer a unique style of coaching. Saryon Michael White, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, first of all, for contacting and reaching out to me. I'm always fascinating with the whole channeling phenomena. I'm doing a docu-series which is being released very soon on this. First of all, whereabouts in the world are you?
I am in Southern California, so I'm pretty close to Laguna Beach.
Very nice, very nice. And is that where you do the majority of your work as well?
I work from home, yes. I write, I channel for people, I do private sessions and teach online courses, do all kinds of different conference calls and video calls like this. And yeah, and then I also travel out, I go on tour, I go out and I channel for groups really all over the world whenever I get a chance.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, you know, when I do end up going back to California, we'll try to get you on the docu-series as well, most definitely. We'll try to get that arranged. Okay. Saryon, where did that name come from?
Interesting story. I met a living master when I was in Mount Shasta back when I was probably like 22 at the time. So this was, decades ago, literally. And he invited me to have a session with him, and he actually channeled that name for me. And he said, this is the name that the ascended masters and the angels call you by. And at the time, that resonated with me because I had been wishing since my early teens that I would discover a kind of a spiritual name for myself one day. And so it fulfilled that wish. But it wasn't until about 2012 that that name activated. And I suddenly started to hear all of these different masters and beings speaking to me and calling me by that name. And so it just awakened inside of me. It became part of the vibration of my channelship with the masters and the angels that I work with. And since then, I've been known by that name.
Wow. Okay. So much to talk about, right? Were you always a seeker?
Yes, absolutely. I would say that from an early age, I noticed that I had very vivid lucid dreams as far back as I can remember. And for at least all of my childhood and my teen years, I was exploring consciousness through lucid dreaming and trying to answer questions about what life is and how reality works and human psychology and past lives. And so dreams became the vehicle for my exploration, and it led to a lot of really interesting questions which seemed to answer themselves over time until I had a couple of really profound breakthroughs that started to open the next doorway. One was a kind of a contact experience that happened in a lucid dream state with an extraterrestrial energy that to me felt like this could not be just a dream. You know, the dream was just the opening to connect with something that was a much greater reality that existed independently of me perceiving it. And then I also had a very profound encounter with the Master Jesus, also at the age of 17. And that, again, was a new doorway opening in my spiritual growth.
Of course, of course. Was there a lot of confusion in that time? Were you able to share this with people, immediate family, for example?
You know, I don't remember sharing those experiences with anybody at the time. I did have a very close friend that we used to talk about consciousness and the holographic universe and all of those kinds of ideas, but I was the one that was having these kinds of experiences. There really wasn't anyone around me right away, but eventually I met a friend in college who kind of paralleled my awakening for a little while, and we were both having experiences of contact with extraterrestrial energies, out-of-body experiences. We were both starting to practice channeling together. So I did have different people that kind of stepped in along the way that mirrored back to me some of these potentials so that I didn't think that I was just completely crazy.
Right, absolutely. No, well, you need that self-check-in sometimes, don't you?
Exactly.
Just to make, and I think it's very healthy for you to have that as well. Very healthy. So, a religious family, spiritual family?
I came from a family that was Catholic. I was raised in the Catholic Church, but my parents, I think, I thank them and bless them for this. They never instilled in me this belief that, you have to believe a certain way or you're going to go to hell or that there's anything wrong with you exploring other ideas. They never forced religion on me. They just sort of introduced it to me and allowed me to make up my own mind. And there was never any judgment, never any attachment, never any fear that was put into me about exploring my own path. So I feel extremely grateful that I wasn't burdened with those kinds of beliefs and dogma. Like I see so many people coming to me and saying like, wow, I want to learn about how to travel out of body, but my church tells me that it's like the work of Satan, you know, and I tell people like, well, that's how I met Jesus the first time. I was out of body. That's how I have had all kinds of encounters with the very beings that you're reading about in the Bible. These are the beings that I hang out with when I'm out of body. And, people say, oh, well, it's devil spirits, the devil's leading you astray. But that's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard, because when you meet beings like the real Jesus, it is unmistakable. You cannot mistake that being for anything else, because the love is so pure and so transformative. It changes you forever just having vibrational contact with a source of cosmic unconditional love that's so powerful. And what's difficult for people coming from religious backgrounds sometimes to understand is that Christ doesn't have a monopoly on that kind of vibration of love. There's a vast universe out there of beings that live within that vibration, and it's only in this little corner of physical reality where we're looking at the universe from inside of this bubble of separation and duality that we miss that we're actually contained inside of these realms of love and light that are just not apparent to us because of the way that we've been taught to perceive through our lenses of belief, and through the nervous system of the body, which also plays a role.
Oh, of course it does. Yes, absolutely. Yes, it does. How have your parents taken the work that you're doing now, then? I mean, with what you do?
Well, my mom's actually surprisingly been open to it the whole way. So she's a very intellectual person. She's always had a passion for learning and an interest in spirituality. Not the kind of interest that I had from an early age, but she has been open-minded and has been pursuing kind of her own line of research around, esoteric knowledge and spiritual things here and there. And she's always been sort of involved in the conversations that I was having with my friends about it. My dad, I never really got to talk about these kinds of things with him while he was alive, but in spirit, I have experiences of his spirit coming to me. Sometimes I see him out of body. We have conversations, and he's very, very supportive of the work that I do.
Well, that's very beautiful that you've got that connection. And we all have the ability to have that connection as well, don't we? I mean, if I was to say to you, what are your abilities or what's your gifts, it kind of takes away that from anyone else. It brings a separation there, doesn't it?
Yeah, and actually I find that there are some really simple tools and techniques that are accessible to absolutely everyone that can strengthen your bridge of connection to the realm of the guides and the angels, or a loved one on the other side that you want to connect with. Probably one of the most powerful tools is gratitude. If you focus on the gratitude that you have for, say, for example, a friend or a relative that's passed on, your gratitude for the memories that you share with them, your gratitude for their being, that stimulates the field of connection that you share between souls. And it strengthens it, because when you're grateful for them, they feel it and they reciprocate with gratitude for you, and then it builds rapport. And that's something anybody can learn how to do. Anybody can learn how to build rapport between themselves and another being, whether it's a person that is alive, whether they are on the other side, whether it's an animal, whether it's a nature spirit, an extraterrestrial energy, and an ascended master. Building rapport is something that eventually every single human being on the planet will understand things about how to do that. because it's just something that we learn how to do with human attention and awareness. Doesn't matter how psychic or how gifted you are in those kinds of areas. All of those things are going to become enhanced through practicing those ways of being anyways, just being grateful and learning how to focus on the connections that are there, as opposed to the way we're normally looking around and seeing things as distance and contrast and separates. We're tending to look at everything as being separate from one another. We look at people and we see our bodies as these separate containers for consciousness, and we're not focusing with our brains and our minds on seeing or being aware of the field that connects us together. So when we start to focus more on the field that connects us than we do on the different reference points for human energy that exist inside of these bodies, it's going to start to switch on areas of the brain that actually support us to perceive those things more readily.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're going to get into some of the depths of your work as well very shortly. Just for the audience as well right now, what is your website?
It is saryon.com. So that's just my name, saryon.com. I'm actually just about to launch a new version of it. So a lot of people hearing this will probably see the newer version. And also my book, Roya Sands and the Bridge Between Worlds. So royasands.com is also its own website for the book.
Okay. Well, both those websites are linked below in the description of this video, and they're coming up on the screen, of course, as well, throughout this interview. So more information there. And again, you do courses there that, you can book a reading with yourself. Yeah, would you call it a reading? Have I got the right word there?
Yes. Yeah, I would call it a reading. I do a combination of intuitive reading with people where I'm acting as kind of an intuitive coach, really. I can really feel into a person's blocked energy, or to get a read on the different blind spots that they might have in their own creative process, so that we can start to work around them. But then usually in the sessions I do, we also go to the guides, and I will channel people's guides for them. So if you don't know who your guides are, usually you'll find out over the course of the session. It's really, really interesting work because I never know who's going to show up, and a lot of times it's a surprise because I channel guides all the time that I've never consciously met before.
Yes, that is an art, to be able to just do that as well, and not to have the ego come in to judge what's going on as well. That's a practice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, so who were you then prior to this work? I mean, if you look back at that process of you getting to where you got, do you recognize the person you were before?
I am unrecognizable to who I was before. And I would say that was true of me even just looking back into the last, say, 10 or 12 years. A completely different person than I was before that point. But if I look back to, between, what I call my awakening and who I was before then, I was a person that was searching for answers everywhere. I was a voracious reader. I was always spending my extra time at the library. The library was my temple. And I was constantly going in and, researching everything I could think of and correlating information from, physics and history and ancient civilizations and, trying to put all of these different things together. I mean, you see documentaries coming out now that have pieced together information that's being correlated from all different fields of research. And that's the kind of stuff that I was delving into back before there were documentaries that are doing that for us now. But when I had my awakening, it partly stemmed from realizing that I could learn how to channel and I could access these things directly. Like, okay, I want to know what's missing from Einstein's work. I'll just connect with the spirit of Einstein and I'll channel him and I'll get information from him. And then maybe I want to go find out, like, well, what are the hidden missing teachings of Jesus that got left out of the Bible? Let's go talk to Jesus. I mean, that was the way I was thinking when I first learned about what channeling was. I thought, wow, this is great. This is like discovering a whole new hidden library of souls and beings. And I'll be able to read those beings just like reading books. I kind of imagined that it could be that way. And it wasn't that way in the beginning. It took a while before it got there, but not a long while, because it actually is kind of like that. It is a lot like reading books, except you're doing it with a direct mind to holographic interface of living knowledge. You know, you're looking at history, you're looking at the memories of other people's lifetimes sometimes.
Yeah, it's almost like tapping into an aspect of their soul as well, isn't it? You may not be connecting to what you think you're connecting to in the sense of, them as the incarnated version as they was, but everything about that soul is stored, isn't it? In a sense, it's still active, it's still there. It's for everyone to be able to tap into.
Everything is there. And I think another key, I always like to give people keys that they can apply to start to expand their own awareness of these types of things. Because I always say that, it's not about how psychic you are. If you're an explorer, if you're a truth seeker, there are ways that you can expand your consciousness into this awareness without starting out with a lot of raw psychic ability. So, one of the main keys is that you just have to let go of attachment to your own reference point. Let go of being attached to being right. If you're not attached to being right and thinking that you know so much, then you can come at it from this perspective of thinking that, I know very little. And the more I learn, the more I realize how little I really know.
Right, absolutely. I mean, do you think, though, that the sort of groundwork that you did in all these sort of, books that you were reading gave you a greater vocabulary to be able to connect with what you do now?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad I read as many books as I did, because I seem to have gone through a long period of time where I wasn't reading books anymore. I was getting everything from the internet. And I just I've realized this several different times that, reading books is a habit that I don't really want to let go of. And so I've gradually integrated books back into my life after not having gotten information that way in a while. But yeah, absolutely. It really built my vocabulary and gave me a background, a platform that could be built upon for the work that I would do as a channel.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think sometimes if you don't have that, I think that which you connect with, it's just a little bit more difficult with what they're trying to, to meet that bridging point in a sense.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's kind of how I look at it as well, that the education that I was guided to give to myself through my own research was really a preparation. I was going to be channeling concepts in spiritual science later on in life, and so my soul was guiding me to read about physics and to follow information about the newest scientific discoveries, so that I could be able to understand information that would come through that would speak to those kinds of things.
Yes, absolutely. And just let me point out as well, you do have a YouTube channel. We are linking that in the description below as well. And if you want to check out more on this guest, you can do by the YouTube channel as well, and do subscribe. So with the channeling then, what is your process of connecting in a sense?
Well, I have a couple of different modes that I use. I would say, like, when I'm going to be on a phone with somebody and it's a normal time frame for a reading, which is about maybe an hour and 20 minutes, then it's a little bit quicker process. I'm not expecting people to wait a super long time for me to get into a deep trance state. So it's more of a process of blending energies with the guide and getting a flavor of their personality and their consciousness. And so it's kind of a little bit more of a combination of me channeling my higher self energy and then the guide that's blending in, because we're all doing it very consciously. And that's kind of a quicker process for me than if I'm going to channel for a group of people that are all meeting in somebody's house, which I love doing, and I do that all the time. Then I will have my partner actually will play these crystal alchemy bowls. So we have these really beautiful crystal bowls. You can see these in the background. We'll usually take a selection of these with us, and we will play them for the group to bring people into an experience of a sound bath. Because sound, interestingly, when you're using sound with intention, it creates a kind of a dimensional bridge that makes it easier for the higher beings to step their frequencies down into the denser vibrations. So the idea is to give people an attunement to the energies that are coming in and to create a field multidimensionally that supports everyone to have a deeper experience of the energies of the beings. So while my partner is playing the bowls, I will be just meditating and going into a deeper state. So that way I have a little more time to work with in going there. And the bowls also help me. So I love being in a sound bath, and then we'll have maybe a period of like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes in silence afterwards. And then at that point, I'm in a really deep state of connection with a particular master or guide. And then they'll start to speak.
Absolutely. And do you feel as well that if you had started channeling at too younger age, that maybe you would have walked away from this work? If this gift had come in too soon, do you think it happened, well, obviously it happened for you at the right time, but do you think you need to have some sort of worldly experience, or have some, you just need to be at a certain age to push this forward sometimes? Or have you noticed that there's younger channelers coming in nowadays?
I have met some very gifted young people that were in their teens, early 20s, and even counseled some of them about their abilities and how to relate to them and how to, not become ungrounded by it, or afraid of it, or to attach any kind of sense of spiritual importance around having such abilities or having such openings, are all mistakes that people can make. And I did that myself when it first happened to me. Not everyone experiences a dramatic opening like I did. For some people, they have these gifts and abilities that are just kind of there in the background, and they gradually awaken over time. For me, it was a very, very dramatic opening, that there were echoes of that opening that happened on the year before. But when it finally happened to me, it was like slam, you are getting struck by lightning. It was like I was enveloped with white light. I was able to just sort of hang out and have conversations with God for about an hour. And every question I asked, it was like an explosion of a holographic vision in my mind. And I was able to see humanity's futures. I was able to see things in the ancient past. I was able to ask questions about what I was going to do with my life. I had like a whole life preview that happened at the age of 18. And I saw what it would look like once I had fully developed into the highest potential version of myself. And then I came back into my body. Suddenly I'm still there. I'm a freshman in college. I still have homework to do. It's like, whoa. Yeah, so I didn't know, I didn't have a direct path of like, how am I going to get from where I am now to what I saw in that vision. I just knew that I'd been given a very powerful preview, and I still had to, work minimum wage jobs. I still was going to school. I still had a very grounded life for quite some time before finally in 2005 is when the masters came to me and they said, we want you to start doing readings for people. And I was taken aback because I thought, well, I don't know how to do that. I've never done that. I mean, I've had a passion for channeling, an interest in it. I've been channeling through writings and journalings, but this is a order of magnitude difference. This is like beings actually really wanting to come through me to speak to other people. And the first time I did it, I didn't know what I was doing. It just happened, and it's like I was kind of learning on the job.
Well, this is so interesting. So, with the channeling docu-series that I'm releasing soon, one of the main messages I was trying to put in there is that we all have this ability. And if the most basic ability is to just channel your higher self, that's a beautiful thing to bring through. It's like, for me, I see it as a funnel. And it's like when you channel, you're opening that funnel up and allowing that greater part of yourself through. So my question is, what is the benefits of even having a conversation with your higher self?
Well, the benefits I would say are many. One of which is that the consciousness of your higher self is more plugged into a state of wholeness and oneness with humanity, with the earth, with a larger vision of who and what we are. And so you can expand in your consciousness in a way that facilitates and opens connection. You learn how connected you are. You start to actually feel a greater level of connectedness with all things. And so one of the keys to accessing higher self is that shift from I consciousness to we consciousness. The higher self often will speak to others or about itself as a we consciousness. We are many in one beings. So that sense of individuality is something that you let go of a little bit in that connection with the higher self. Not a lot, but enough to sort of click into this other framework where you start to speak about the whole of humanity as if you are representing the whole of humanity in your consciousness. Mm-hmm. You can speak about the we of everything.
Thank you, thank you. What other channels out there really inspired you as well, in a sense? Were there any sort of old-time channelers, in a sense, that you thought, that really helped you on your journey as well?
I really loved the work of Seth through Jane Roberts.
I knew you was going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Seth's work had a profound impact on people that were really studying this phenomenon of channeling. And that was probably one of the big name ones. There were also people that I met. Like there was a guy that lived in my hometown of Oklahoma City, and he worked at a grocery store, and maybe like once a month he would have a small group of friends over to this tiny apartment, and he would channel his guides for people. He had one friend that would talk him down listening to this particular song that he always listened to. And then after about 20 minutes, he was in a deep state and people could ask him questions. And he would just basically do little mini readings for people, and they would always tape it and just give you the tape. It was all done as a gift unconditionally. And just watching how that worked was really profound, to just see that, wow, normal people that, work in a grocery store and pay their bills and, live in a small apartment, do this kind of thing.
Yes,
and what it would be to come from anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And what it would be just to have taken a camera back then and even just captured that. Do you know what I mean? That would have been beautiful, and especially the Seth material. That would have been. I mean, yeah, there is footage online of some of the Seth classes, and we feature the Seth material within the docu-series as well. But yeah, I resonate with you there. How do you check yourself in the sense that you are bringing through information that's coming from love? How do you keep yourself from distorting that information?
That is a really good question. I wish that I had a perfect answer for that. I feel that for me, it is an evolving process of developing the right way of checking in with yourself when you're in the process of going into a state of connection with the guides, and always evolving discernment. The ego does get involved. I think that's true of almost anybody. And so it is something you have to watch out for. You have to be very vigilant. What I find is that my integrity with the masters and the guides and with truth is high enough that I seem to consistently pass those tests. And I know that I'm passing it because I'm constantly sort of being thrown off a little bit when I'm initially by my own ego. So I can be meditating and I might have an expectation. For example, there was a really funny session that I did once where I saw the Ascended Master Saint Germain coming in. And Saint Germain was a guide I've worked with a lot. And I thought, okay, he's going to be the one that comes. But then he didn't come in my body all the way. He was testing me to let go of my attachment to channeling him. And then the Master Buddha came in. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to be channeling Buddha for this person. And I started to connect with the energy of the Buddha, but then he wasn't coming in all the way. And then a third master came in that I couldn't tell who it was at first. And then I thought, really? You want me to channel 3 different masters in one session? This doesn't, or at least back then it didn't happen very often. And then this other master started coming in and finally revealed itself. And it was a test because they were helping me to let go of my attachment to the expectations that were arising in the process. That was, a new thing at the time when that happened. And there are other things that they have done throughout the entire process that it's like on the job training every time. I think one thing is going to happen. They might even test me or tempt me a little bit to want to take control over where it's going, because it feels uncomfortable when you're sitting there in silence and somebody is waiting for you to start talking and waiting, because I can feel very sensitive to the other person's expectancy. But I keep getting tested to let go deeper and deeper and deeper. And they'll tell me, I mean, I'll hear them say, you need to let go more. You need to let go more. And I'll go, okay, all right, and I guess there is a part of me that's controlling here. I'll take a look at that. So I have to continually work at it. I'm not one of those channels that just leaves my body and goes out and is completely unconscious and something else comes in. It is a constant process of learning how to discern what is happening with the energy. And to me, it's a lot like Luke Skywalker with the blast shield helmet on, and he's having to learn how to stretch out his feelings and not rely on his eyes. He has to go on instinct. It feels a lot like that. Like I can't see, very clairvoyantly what's going on. I'm having to constantly stretch and learn with other inner senses. And I feel like maybe one day when I'm strong enough in these other forms of discernment, then maybe they'll let me have a little more clairvoyance or something. But that's just not how it's working right now.
Well, no, it's a great analogy. I mean, Star Wars has got a lot of beautiful spiritual teachings in there as well. And I'm sure when George, wrote that, he let his higher self come through to put its own take on those films as well, especially the original ones.
Yeah.
But I'm biased. But I ask these questions. The reason why people might be thinking, well, come on, Kev, get into some other teachings. Well, no, hang on a minute. We need to know who you are. Because if you're not in the right place, what you're bringing through is not going to be from the right place. I've learned that the hard way, that there are channels out there that are not coming from the right place, that are bringing through misinformation, disinformation, that are using people, that whatever they're bringing through is not in alignment with love. It pretends to be. I have seen the negative side.
Yep.
It is, and it does exist. And I never thought I would even be saying these words, but it does.
And it needs to be talked about, because there needs to be a lot of discernment. We all need to continually evolve our discernment. I would say one of the most common things that I see in the darker side is attention-seeking patterns. If somebody is seeking attention, that can become a very clear, discernible agenda that you can see in and behind the words that are presented there. And also, if you see things that are carrying a great sense of urgency, a lot of times people, when they are having their own fears stoked, then they start to become susceptible to information coming from distorted sources that will play upon this sense of urgency. Like, you need to get this out. You need to get this out to as many people as possible. Well, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've had to learn how to be very patient and unattached as to how many people show up and how quickly things build and when the information goes out. I mean, probably some of the best, most mind-blowing, world transformative potential information that I've received. I received it, and then I was asked to sit on it for a decade. And I was told it's not time. It's like, wait a minute, this is what's going to change the world. This is what's going to put me on the map. No, you need to have no attachment to any of it. And the world can wait. So whenever you have that sense of urgency, or you need to get followers or attention or whatever, then that's you're opening the doorway for distorted energies to get involved.
And sometimes they speak so nicely, and I ain't talking about that which they channel, I'm talking about the actual person as well. It comes across so sensibly and so grounded, and it misleads. And, I never used to focus on this side of it, but, well, you have to, don't you? I mean, why do you... I don't want to mislead people. I know you don't. But we live in a duality, and there's both sides, isn't there? Someone once said to me, I do support channeling. I do. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful way in to get the answers you're looking for. But it normally only is really asking you to find the answers anyway, in a sense. It's kind of self-empowering in a sense. But, I've met many people where they say, oh, well, channeling's like being in the ghetto and just, putting a fishing line out there and just, whatever you get back, you get back. But I don't see it like that. But that is some people's analogy of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that it comes down to the quality and consciousness of the intentions that a person has around why they are doing it, what they are doing. I think having an intention to be of service to others and to improve oneself so that you become a better gift to the world and you're able to contribute more through being a good person and to be a really healed, purified, well-refined person. If those are your intentions, you will attract to yourself very high-level guides. There are different kinds of intentions that will create a stronger bridge than others to the realm of the high-level guides. So you make a very good point about all of it. I also think that when it comes to the wide spectrum of what's out there, when you encounter information that does really empower you to access what is already inside of you, which is the point you're making, that is something you can feel when information does that, when it helps you to come back from that outer focus of thinking the answers are outside of you somewhere so that you're always chasing after something that's elusive instead of just checking in with yourself and being more in tune and in harmony with yourself. That's another thing to really look for.
And I think some of these channelers that do spread a lot of love as well, I think the person that's going to see them that's the right channel for them. We always meet the right person. The master always shows itself when we're ready, in a sense, right? So we're always attracted to the level at which that channel is at as well, right? And I think the love messages are so important as well because self-love is a massive part of that process of being able to come from that space of self-empowerment as well.
Absolutely. I also really hold that the masters and guides and beings that I'm working with, these are as much my teachers as they are yours. I'm basically a student of all the same masters that you are. So any master that you could think of, I am humbly and equally a student with you. And so I come from that place when I'm working with these guides, and I find that I constantly am learning from what happens, because when I work with a person or a group, it's like I become equally part of the audience of what is coming through me as well. So I'm constantly learning in that way.
Absolutely, then, and thank you for saying that. And I mean, you must have noticed, that channeling has become more popular, much more popular, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to need to go more mainstream if somebody like me is ever going to go into the field of politics, because right now I think about like all of the videos and interviews and stuff that I'm putting out there in the world that are probably still going to be around for a while about these kinds of subjects. And it's like, I've had dreams and visions for years about getting involved in politics later on in life. So how's that going to work if I'm like becoming this, well-known channeler or something? That's it's going to have to shift. The mass consciousness is going to have to shift, and to embrace some of these ideas and be more open-minded about it.
But you see that, don't you? I see that. I see it shifting. I mean, even just to say that channeling's become more popular. I mean, when I first got into the subject, which wasn't that long ago, but still, it was, for some people, it's the hardest level of spirituality to get into, in a sense, because it just seems so foreign to us, doesn't it? But I think, this is my take on it, that a lot more people now, as you, are not going into those sort of deeper states of trance, that they're actually, it's conscious channeling, let's call it that.
Yes, yeah, conscious channeling. And I actually find that a lot of this is related to a language shift that is starting to unfold on a planetary scale. And the simplest, easiest parts to understand of this, you can grasp through looking at just how the usage of certain words and terms has filtered into mass consciousness. I watched, I want to say this was like almost 10 years ago. It was a news report where they were interviewing an athlete that was stepping out onto a field. He was talking about his experience of stepping out onto this field where all these great games had been played. And he talked about the aura of the field. Like, I could just feel the aura of all of these great athletes that have played here before, and it inspires me. So that was something that was just on a mainstream news report. And then I think during one of the presidential campaigns, or it was during an election year some time ago. This was back when Obama was running, and they were asking some voters on, it was maybe like CNN, they had a whole row of voters. They were going and asking them what they thought of the different speeches or maybe certain points. And the reporter was asking, did it resonate? Did this resonate with you? That's spiritual scientific language. Did it resonate? And people saying, oh, yeah, it really resonated with me. Well, resonance has everything to do with how channeling works. It has everything to do with how you can begin to understand consciousness and multidimensionality and all the kinds of stuff that somebody like Nikola Tesla was into a century ago, understanding all of reality as frequency, resonance, and vibration. So those things are filtering in. It's actually this book that I wrote, Roya Sands, Bridge Between Worlds. This book is part of a larger body of work. It's actually the first book that I published, but it's part of a larger body of work that is designed to help change the global conversation that we're having about a number of different topics, but it also is putting new words into the global conversation. There are words that are introduced through these teachings and stories, and you start to see the characters using and embracing these terms as they see the eye through different eyes. They see through other kinds of filters that are new ways of trying on these perceptions that are giving us greater insight into how energy works.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Absolutely. And with your guides, I mean, obviously you spoke previously about the masters that came to you. Now, what you bring through now, if you have a team, sorry, that's my word for it, but you call it the guides.
Yeah.
Okay. And how often do you connect with the guides? Are you always using the guides when you connect with a reading through them to a client?
I would say every single time I do a reading, there's a whole group of guides that are present, and it may change depending on who's showing up for the reading. I kind of see it inwardly as if there is another room sort of superimposed on the room that I'm in. Usually when I do readings, I'm in a kind of a darkened room so that I can just focus on my connection with the person, and there's no loud noises and there's not a lot of light. Sometimes I'll even do sessions from the walk-in closet if that's the quietest, darkest place in the house. But I'll see this room, and it's like there's a row of chairs out in front of me, and different guides and masters might come and sit down and be there for the reading, as if they're like looking in on it from that other reality that's superimposed into mine, or that's being bridged into mine. And then sometimes a guide might stand up and walk over and sort of sit down into my field as if we're both sitting in the exact same spot and blending energies. That's kind of one of the ways that I visualize it. It changes from time to time, but I work with guides all the time. I work with them. I have a whole team of guides that I work with when I'm writing. Like, I'm working on the rest of this whole series because this is book 1 of 4. So when I'm working on the series, there's a whole group of guides that come in for that project. And there are specific types of guides that help you with, things like a fiction book. Or if you're writing a play or you're writing something for television, there are guides that work with creative processes that are different than if you were doing a reading for somebody. But I also get up and meditate for an hour every morning. Sometimes I meditate for an hour before I go to sleep at night. I'm constantly making myself available for whatever wants to happen. And for me, it's not just about getting guidance. I meditate for the pleasure of it. When I sit and I meditate with my guides, I can feel them working with me. My chakras open up. Sometimes I even feel blissful states of energy or deep feelings of peace. And then I'll just relax and just vibe with the energy that's come in for a little while. To me, it just feels so healthy and natural to access these natural states of energy and to then be able to send that out into the world and to be able to hold the vibration of those energies with people that I meet.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, yeah, and I think the guys that you're connecting to, everyone that's watching this, they've got their own guys as well, and they could easily just go into meditation. And tell me if I'm wrong here, right? Or that you might have another way of doing this, but it could easily go into meditation and feel the presence and even the messages, if they allowed it, of their own guides, by just allowing loving thoughts to come in their head, and then processing it. Taking that process from there, in a sense. I mean, yeah.
Well, since you're getting into this, I'll just share a little perspective on how to do this. There's a process that I have used for a long time that I learned from my angelic guides, and I actually call it taking an angel nap. What I'll do is, imagine if you're a kid and you're going to be wrapped up in a little warm blanket, and somebody sort of tucking you in, and you feel all of the love of being tucked in by your mom to take a little nap when you're 2 years old. It's a little bit like that, but you sit and you do a little invocation to your angelic guides. I think it works really well when you're starting out to focus on the angelic energy first, because for me, the angelic energy is the bridge. It's the clearinghouse for everything else that comes through. So I always intend that nothing reaches me or can come through unless it is coming through the field of my connection with the angelic presence. But you can just ask your angelic guides to surround you and wrap you in a blanket of their love. And then you just meditate for maybe a couple minutes. You say a prayer of gratitude. You can say, thank you for helping me in all of the ways that I'm not able to see. And please help me to let go of anything that I no longer need and no longer serves me. And then you just take a few slow, deep breaths to welcome in the energy and give thanks to it. And then you actually just lay down and relax. And you can allow yourself to go into a sort of a cat napping kind of state, where you're not intending to go all the way to sleep, but you're just taking a 5-10 minute nap. And you allow yourself to just feel the energies. You can give them permission to give you a healing session, to give you an energy bath. That invitation can be very powerful, and you might actually start to feel a spiritual current running through you. And you don't have to achieve a trance state. You don't have to be like meditating for a long time. You don't even have to clear your mind, because your mind starts to empty out naturally when you lay down to take a nap, because you're taking rest. You're giving your mind a rest already, because you're not in that mode of thinking about what do I need to do next. You're taking that kind of thought process out of the equation of what's happening in your brain, and you're making yourself available for something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for putting that into much beautiful words than I could there. I think that's a great way of doing it. And I know that obviously we promised you that we'd only keep you for 50 minutes right now, and there's just so much to talk about. I think I will just do one final question, if that's okay.
Sure.
And we'll get you back on in the future to do a channeled session potentially. We're definitely getting on the docu-series, but I thought it was just important just to speak to you in this state. We want to know you.
Absolutely.
But what would you say is the most important message as of now that the guides would give, if they could give a message or have been given a message?
Well, we're seeing a lot in the world and in the news about how climate change is impacting the world. And I was given a very powerful vision just about 2 weeks ago about climate change and about how we can relate to what is happening, why it's happening, and where it's leading us. Because there are times when it can look really scary. It certainly is life-threatening for some people. And it certainly looks to be a very difficult and challenging road ahead. But in this vision, what I was shown that is that even though climate change is basically a ticking time bomb that is going to go off in most of our lifetimes, it has the potential to bring humanity into a state of global cooperation like nothing has ever done before. And that is a very powerful opportunity. And so the spiritual energy to help all of the world's nations to begin to align with this incoming spirit of cooperation is there. There's actually, it's not just that we're dealing with this profound mess and we're going to have to rise to the occasion. There's also literally a oneness energy, a unified field, a spirit of cooperation, a spirit of prosperity for all, even, that is coming into the field of human consciousness collectively and is helping us to start to take a different look at the resources that we have available to us, so that we start to view what we have as commonwealth, so that we view what we have as what we are here to steward for the benefit of others, so that we can all start to think and work collaboratively to achieve shared goals locally and on a planetary scale. So that spirit of cooperation is something that will also emerge through the heart, and it will be connected with an awakening of compassion like nothing that has ever happened before in the world. That's what you want to attune to, is the awakening of compassion through the heart. And if we all start to intend on a more regular basis to visualize and see and access a compassionate outcome for what is happening, either around the world or even in our own sphere of influence, then that compassionate version of reality that treats all of us more fairly, treats us as equals, breaks down barriers of separation, connects us all together, those realities will start to emerge. The guidance we need for how to get there will emerge from inside of us, and we will all start to lead more intuitive and more divinely guided lives.
Beautiful, beautiful. And your website is?
Saryon.com. That's SARYON.com. And you also can go to royasands.com. I'm also doing signed author copies of the book. Of course, that's only if you're in the United States. If you're outside the United States, you want to just get it from Amazon. But I will say that I'm just about to start a new live monthly discussion group. It's free to join. If you go to royasands.com and sign up for the newsletter there's a pop-up that will come as soon as you come to the website, sign up for the newsletter, and you'll be on the list to hear about the free monthly discussion group that we're going to do, discussing all kinds of topics like what we've been talking about here.
Well, we'll link that again in the description of the video. I just want to say, Saryon White, just thank you so much with everything that you've shared with us today. We've thoroughly enjoyed it, and there's just never enough time, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet you and come be connected to your community.